This is a movie review. This is the movie Harriet, released in 2019, directed by Kasi Lemmons. It stars Cynthia Erivo in the lead role as Harriet, Leslie Odom Jr., Joe Alwyn, Clark Peters, and Vanessa Bell Calloway and Janelle Monáe. Some of you might know that Janelle Monáe is a successful music artist, and I'm not sure if this is her debut, but she's got a particularly strong part in this movie. And the music is by Terence Blanchard. Okay, so Cynthia Erivo plays Minty Ross, later to become Harriet Tubman. Leslie Odom Jr. plays William Still. He's an activist in the anti-abolitionist movement in Pennsylvania. And the other very significant member of this cast is Joe Alwyn, who plays the slave owner's son, Gideon Brodess. Okay, so what have we got here? Well, Harriet's based on a true story about 27-year-old Minty Ross, enslaved since birth in the Brodess family, who own a small town plantation in Virginia. Her family circumstances are complicated. The females, her mother and her siblings, are all slaves, but her father, like her husband, is a free man. At the beginning, we witness a confrontation, incident involving Minty and her husband and the slave owner and his son. Her husband, John Tubman, is asking the slave owner to free Minty so that he and her can start a family. Minty is not prepared to have her children become slaves, which is actually the law at that particular time. The owner reacts particularly viciously and reinforces his right to dictate as and when these people he describes as niggers will be set free. This then prompts Minty to consider her future, and she eventually, when hearing that the son, Gideon, has put a for sale notice up on trees around the neighbourhood, so to speak, that he's going to sell Minty, she then decides, after discussing it with her husband, she decides that her only way to a future is to run away, is to flee. And he is reluctant to join her based on the fact that he feels that if they go together, they'll inevitably be caught and he will be lynched. So Minty, after discussing this with her husband, decides to flee, to run away alone. And she's heading for Philadelphia. There, slaves have escaped to Philadelphia, have become free, and there is an anti-slavery movement active up there, which is encouraging the US government to consider the law with regard to slavery. So there she feels she has hope. However, it's 100 miles plus from where she is, and so it's going to be an extremely difficult task. But we witness her harrowing escape, being pursued by Gideon on horseback and tracker dogs, and a large posse are looking for her, and she eventually gets cornered on a bridge over a ravine, and she decides to take her chances by jumping off the river bridge into the rapids. Amazingly, she survives, though those who witnessed assumed that she died. And she then, with help from people en route, white and blacks, who are sympathetic to her plight, she manages to get to Philadelphia with the help of the Underground Railway people as well. And she arrives and aligns herself with William Still, who runs an anti-slavery group, and ends up residing in the home of Maria Buchanan, played by the aforementioned Janelle Monáe. This phase of the film is sensitively handled, and it becomes clear that Minty, although she is now free, is committed to returning to Virginia to free her family at all costs. She is rather headstrong but determined to carry this out, and although Still tries to put the reins on her impulsiveness, she then starts a series of journeys down south to liberate her family. And this is takes up a large chunk of the movie, and by now Minty has changed her name to Harriet Tubman, her free name as she describes it, and she commits herself to reunite with her husband. The plot then sort of develops after making the trip and finding her husband. She is shattered to find that he has taken a new wife, believing her to be dead. But her determination continues, and we see a process whereby she travels back with members of her family in a harrowing escape. The situation has become more and more dangerous following a new law passed in 1850, making it illegal for anyone to help slaves escape the clutches of their owners. It's called the Fugitive Slave Law, and this puts Harriet's position in grave jeopardy. The film then becomes a tale of her determination and strength to fulfill her promise, and alongside that, we witness Gideon's obsession. Once he's aware that Harriet is still alive, his obsession to capture and torture Harriet, based on his deep-rooted racism and his desire to reinforce his power over her. This sort of subplot takes us through to the latter parts of the story, and this villain created in the script was fictional, but it reflected quite significantly the way the white landowner viewed the African Negro. So this movie depicts this courageous story by Harriet in the face of huge odds in the mid-19th century in the US, when slavery was endemic in all southern states. The landed gentry saw it as their right to own Negroes, and in the period 1849 to 1853, covered in the film, the fight to end slavery was gaining momentum and impetus, and the vicious response from the landowners, who strove to prevent the more liberal North moving towards outlawing slavery. This film also shows how the slave owners employed other Negroes to grass on those wishing to gain their freedom. A very significant message, I found, and based on, of course, the poverty that existed, which was widespread. Some of the scenes, particularly the dialogue, shakes you to the bone when you hear it. Gideon was heard to say to a group of African Americans, if you niggers help my slave estate, I'm holding you responsible. And he also adds in another conversation that he compares slaves to piglets, depending on the pig, meaning he is the pig. The performances in the movie are indicative of what was happening throughout the United States, and although it's not 12 Years a Slave, the Steve McQueen epic, an Oscar winner, Harriet, being for a PG audience, was considerably toned down with regard to scenes of violence and sexual or exploitation. Because of this, from a viewer's perspective, the film appears to be rather slow and uneventful, but this enables Cynthia Erivo as Harriet to dominate, and her ability to portray a woman of strength, determination and unlimited bravery exudes, and you become attached to her struggle. However, she rarely smiles and is 100% committed to the task throughout. The pivotal relation between her and Gideon was created to give the film a sort of villain as such, but clearly men of his ilk existed at this time, and I don't think the script was weakened by this dramatic encounter, which was very significant throughout. Cynthia Erivo received a nomination for the lead actress at both the Golden Globes and the Oscars for her performance as Harriet, and also the song sang by Erivo, Stand Up, was nominated in the song category at both award ceremonies. The song's a defiant call to fight for freedom. So in conclusion then, I would say films with this subject matter are an essential piece of the history of the United States, reminding comfortable whites of the perils that confronted African Americans in those times. The movie isn't as dramatic or as emphatic or grotesque as 12 Years a Slave, but in its own way it's just as valid, and I thank the director Kasi Lemmons for bringing this story to the screen. So there's my review on Harriet.